Hello, welcome back. Now in today's video, we're going to work on some math question and we'll be working on the 17 questions in the 2021 P6 mid-year exam from Yunus Primary School. Now, if you have not seen the previous video, which is on the questions in paper 1, please go and check it out. If you are my student this year in 2022, please make sure you have your paper with you and a green pen so you can join me together to do the corrections. Now, let's get started. Question 1. Fahmi bought 6 similar t-shirts and a pair of shorts. So, we know that each pair of shorts costs $23 more than each t-shirt. So, if you look at the diagram this way, the model this way, right? This will be the cost of the short, one short and one t-shirt. And one short costs $23 more than the t-shirt. That's the way I'm drawing this model. So, you see, each pair of shorts costs $23 more than each t-shirt. Now, there's only one pair of shorts, so 1, and there are 6 similar t-shirts, so I drew 6 boxes here to represent 6 t-shirts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, we know that he spent a total of $205. So, I drew this bracket here and put $205. So, how much did each t-shirt cost? I need to find out what is the value of one of these rectangular units. Now, I cannot divide 205 by 7 because not everyone is an equal unit. But if I can take away 23, you can see that I will be left with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 equal units. Right? So I think the first step is to subtract 205 by 23 to get 182. Once we get 182, that is equivalent to 7 units here. And we divide it by 7 and we get the answer. And the first 5 questions in paper 2 are the 2-mark question, and you'll always be given 1 mark for the correct answer and 1 mark for the method. So don't just use your calculator to work out your working on it and forget to write out the steps to get your method marks. You also notice that you do not get method marks for every method. You only get the method mark for the step leading on to the answer. So only this step has the method mark. Alright, let's move on to the next question now. Now, Mei Ling and Pei Qi shared the total cost of a present. Mei Ling paid $3 more than 5/12 of the cost of the present. Pei Qi paid $102. How much did the present cost? So notice that I drew a couple of models just to show you there are some better models than others to represent this. Right, so I prefer actually the middle model. The first one was not very successful. The last one is okay, but I think it's confusing to you. So I think the middle model is the best. Let's take a look at this and try to unpack what this means. So Mei Ling and Pei Qi shared the total cost of a present. Mei Ling paid $3 more than 5/12 of the total cost of the present. So let's ignore the $3 first. Just think of Mei Ling paid 5/12 of the total cost. What does it mean? So it means that Mei Ling paid 5 parts. Remember, I'm ignoring the $3 more first. Mei Ling paid 5 parts. And then Pei Qi paid the remaining 7 parts. Total is 12. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This part is paid by Mei Ling. And the remaining part is paid by Pei Qi. Alright, Pei Qi. Now notice I didn't complete the bracket because I need to fill in this part. Mei Ling paid $3 more than 5/12. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this little part here is the $3 more. So up to here is what Mei Ling paid. And Pei Qi paid, of course, 7 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But not exactly 7, right? Because this 7 part here, you notice $3 here is paid by Mei Ling. So the remaining part here, I'm not sure how many dollars, will be paid by Pei Qi. Another way you can see this is through this other model. Mei Ling paid 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus $3 because she paid $3 more. Pei Qi paid 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and take away $3. Now if you can understand this, then we take a look at for Pei Qi. Now Pei Qi paid 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and something here. If you plus $3 to whatever she paid, then payee will have paid 7 equal parts here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I put down 102 plus 3, I get $105. Why do I do this? So I can get this is equivalent to 7 parts. I can divide by 7 to get 15. 15 will be the value of 1 unit. And the present cost 12 parts, right? 12 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 1 part times 12 is 180. This part is where you get your method mark. This part is where you get your answer mark. Let's go to question 3. Now this kind of question is known as internal exchange, and the total is unchanged. So what does it mean? Now Ceiling had 86 stamps and Christina had 148 stamps. After Christina gave some of her stamps to Ceiling, the ratio of the number of Ceiling's stamps to the number of Christina's stamps was 5 to 8. How many stamps did Ceiling have in the end? Many words, right? So not to worry, we break it down step by step, sentence by sentence. So you know the total amount of stamps they both have. Ceiling had 86, Christina had 108. So I put this down first. Ceiling has 86, Christina had 108. The total is 234. So if I put it in a ratio form, Ceiling is 86, Christina is 104, total is 234. Now you know that after Christina gave some stamps to Ceiling, so she gave some stamps to her, the ratio changed to 5:8. Remember? This is internally, they were exchanging their number of stamps, but nobody gave stamps to anyone else. So the total number of stamps between them remains the same. I'll give you a quick example here. Okay, let's say I have 2 pens, you have 3 pens, total 5 pens. Then I give you all my pens. Now I have 0, you have 5, total is still 5. Then you give me 4, you have 1, I have 4, but total is still 5. That's the meaning of the total unchanged part. Okay, no matter how they were changing it, the total still remains as 234. But now we know based on the new ratio, 5:8, the total in terms of units is 5 plus 8 is 13. This gives us this equation that 13 units is equivalent to 234 stamps. Then we can find out what is 1 unit. That's 234 divided by 13, and we get 18. Now, how many stamps did Ceiling have in the end? Ceiling has 5 parts in the end. So we have 5 times 18 is equals to 90. Your method mark will be from this step. Answer mark will be this step. Now, when I'm explaining this about method and answer, this will also help you if you are my student who received the marked paper. Then you will know why you didn't get marks, or you know why you only got part of the marks. Let's go to question 4. Now, question 4 is quite straightforward. We have done this practice in class many times. This year, the number of participants in the charity run was 910. This number, 910, was a 30% increase from last year. So last year was the first year it happened. That would be 100%. That was last year. So if there's a 30% increase for this year, that means 100 plus 30, you have 130%. And that is equivalent to 910 participants. Let's find what is 1%. We divide 910 by 130, you have 7. How many participants were there last year? Last year was 100%, right? Last year. So 100% is 100 times 7. You have 700 participants last year. How can you check your answer? You can check it this way. If last year is equivalent to 100% and there is 700 participants, let's find out what is the 30% increase. 30% increase will be equivalent to 210. 700 divided by 100, you get 1% first. Then 1% times 30. Then you have the 210 increase plus the original from last year. You have 910, which is the number of participants this year. Now let's go on to the area of circle, something that we just covered this term. The figure is made up of a 3/4 circle and a semicircle. The radius of the semicircle is 5 meters. So this part is, notice a semicircle is 5 meters radius. Now the numbers were not put in for you, so you put it in yourself to make it clearer to you. Find the area of the shaded part. So you're supposed to find the area of the shaded part, which is actually quite straightforward if you know what's the radius. Now, since the radius of the 3/4 circle wasn't given to you, you got to find it. And this radius of the 3/4 circle is actually the diameter of the semicircle. So if this, how do you get 10? Well, 5 times 2, right? 5 gives you 10. So the first step is to find out what's the radius. Now, if you have done this, you will also be able to guide yourself through. Remember your CARD. Just write it down. So circumference is pi times diameter, area is pi r. Radius is, we're talking about for the big one. Radius is 10 meters. Diameter is 20 meters. We're not going to use this, but never mind, just write it down. So area will be 3/4 of the area of a circle. Now, area of circle is pi times radius times radius. Radius is 10 meters. And times 3/4. If you can show this step, or you can show getting this first, then multiplying by 3/4, you get M1. And get the correct answer, you get your A1. Make sure you transfer your answer to the answer portion. Okay, now we're done with the first 5 questions, a 10-mark question. Now let's go on to the rest of the bit. It will be more in terms of weighting per question. Now we will skip the algebra question for now, since we'll be covering that in the second semester. Now let's go on to the angles question. Now notice I've labeled them by number 1, 2, alright. 3 is not here, ask me where is 3, and then 4. Okay, so at the side here of my working, I've labeled the steps for you, so you know in the correct sequence which angle should you find first. And the figure below, EFGH is a square. If this is a square, add in your toothpicks. And those in my class will know this as toothpicks. This will help us to remember, oh, suddenly I see that there is an isosceles triangle here. And since this is an equilateral triangle, that means that if this side is equal to this side is equal to this side, then equilateral triangle means I know this angle is actually 60 degrees. So how do I find this angle EHJ? EHJ, I'll add 90 because this is a square. Square means this is 90 degrees. Angles of a square, right, are all at 90 degrees. Plus 60 degrees, I get 150. Now, typically for working, right, if you don't write the degrees here, it should be okay, depending on how strict your school is. Now, but your final answer must have it. Now, if you want to be super safe, just add in your degrees along the way. But definitely the units must be present, the correct units must be present in your final answer. Notice this part here, they didn't give you the units. Whereas in paper 1, I'll show you paper 1, the answer portion, they actually will give you the units in the blank. So don't get into the habit of thinking, oh, this will always be printed for me. This is in paper 1. That will not be the case for paper 2 questions. You've got to write the units yourself. Otherwise, you'll lose your answer mark. So we're supposed to find out what is JEG. So JEG. Now I have a habit of coloring the angle I'm supposed to find. This helps me to focus on that particular angle. Otherwise, there could be many angles and it can be very confusing. So first step is, I was thinking, I see an isosceles triangle here. If I can find this angle in this isosceles triangle, it's very easy to find this angle here, HEJ. That's what I'm thinking when I was looking for this. And why do I want this angle? If I can get this angle, and I know that this angle here is at 45 degrees because this is a square, this is 90, and this is isosceles triangle, so I know these two must be 45. 45 plus 45 plus 90 is 180, right? I know this whole angle is 90. 90 take away 45, take away this angle, I get my answer. So I have that plan in my head first, then I work out my steps. Okay, first step I need to find is this. So I found out this angle. Next step I find angle. My step 2 is to find this. How do I do step 2? HEJ, right? HEJ. I use 180 minus away 150, and then I'll get these two angles, which I then divide by 2 to get one of them. So 15 will be this angle in green. So this is 15 degrees. Next step, I'll go on to look for this angle. And this angle, as I told you, that's my step 3. Very easy to find, which is just 45 degrees. Or is 180 minus 90, then divided by 2, because this is isosceles, I get 45. Then next will be, now this final step, very simple. I can either use 45 minus 15 to get 30, or I can use 90 minus 45 minus 15, I'll still get 30. And you must have the final answer in units. So here, of course, this will be your A1, this will be your M1, either this one M1 or this one M1, right? And you will get this part as your M1 as well. You get this angle as M1 as well. Okay, H, E, J as your M1. 3 marks here. Let's go to the next question. Now, again, if there are many words, don't worry. Just understand line by line. Draw out the model line by line to help yourself understand. A florist had the same number of roses, tulips, and lilies and tulips at first. So at first, you see, I'm just using picture to represent the first sentence. There was the same number of roses, lilies, and tulips, same number. After 50 roses were sold, after some tulips, lilies and tulips were sold, there were 278 flowers left. Okay, and of these, there were 3 times as many lilies as tulips left. The number of roses left were fewer than the number of lilies left. So I look at this, right? Okay, first step is I have my roses. 50 roses were sold. Then that is this part here, sold 50 roses. Next step, I know that the number of roses left was fewer than lilies. Right? Roses are fewer than lilies. So my lily here is here, 16 is here. Hope you can see this. There are fewer roses, 16 fewer roses than lilies. So I put in 16. Then I also know that there were 3 times as many lilies as tulips. So 3 times as many lilies as tulips. That's how I draw the model. 3 times for lilies, 1 for tulip. And the total number, so I've used this clue also. I've used this clue also. Last one will be the 278 flowers here. So how can I solve this question? Now, if only I can find all equal units. How can it be all equal? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If only this is 1 unit, I would have 7 equal units, right? How do I get 1 unit? Very simple. So let's add in 16. If I add in 16, I'll form 1 unit. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I plus 16 to this. I'll get my 7th unit, right? So 7 units will be equivalent to 294. I can find out what is 1 unit. I divided by 7, I have 42. And so to find how many tulips were left. Tulips is equivalent to 1 unit. So my first step is very simple. I just divide and get this. This will be my method mark, answer mark. Next step, how many tulips were sold? So tulips would be, sold is this part. Okay, up to here, sold. So I know that tulips sold. So let me find what is 2 units. So 42 times 2. What is 42? This is 42. Right? 42 tulips less. So why do I find 2 units? So I know that this up to this point, this point here is 84. Okay? 42 times 2 is 84. I know that this part here is 34. How do I know? 50 minus 16 is 34. Remember, so 50 roses, and the roses are fewer by the lilies by 16. So now this gap here is 34. Okay, so this will add these two numbers together. I get my 118 tulips were sold. 1 mark, 1 mark. Now, of course, you can also find it in a different way, but I think this way is straightforward enough. Let's move on to the next question. Now, at the supermarket, 984 eggs were packed into large and small trays to sell. Each large tray contained 30 eggs and each small tray contained 12 eggs. All the trays were full and there were no eggs left over. This is a very important clue. There were no left over. What is the meaning of leftover? For example, 12 divided by 3, 3 times 4, 12 is 0. This is called no leftover. Leftover refers to remainder. For example, 13 divided by 3, 3 times 4, 12. We have 1. This is a remainder. Remainder is a leftover. So language here tells you there's no remainder. Okay, bear that in mind, no remainder. Now you can use the guess and check method, but I think that is too tedious to just get 3 marks. I would suggest you use the assumption method. What's the assumption method? Okay, that means you just assume something. Now what do I assume? We are asked to find out what's the least number of these, means the smallest possible number of trays. If I want to use the smallest number of tray, do I use the big tray or the small tray? Of course the big tray, right? Because the big tray can hold more eggs. So let's assume that all the trays used were the big trays. All the trays when I use the big trays, okay? So if I use, and let's assume, of course we know that all the trays, the big tray can hold 30 eggs. We were told this, right? They can contain 30 eggs. And there were 904 eggs. I divided that by 30. I found out that, okay, I need 32 trays, big trays. But there are some remainder, right? But we can't have remainder, because it's supposed to be no remainder. There were no eggs left. What does this remainder means? It means remainder 24. Which means after putting 30 eggs into every tray, into 300 and after putting 30 eggs into 32 trays, there were still 24 eggs left. So these 24 eggs will fill up 0.8 of one big tray. But since we want all the trays to be full, so we can't be using the big tray for the last 24 eggs. Otherwise, there will be like 6 gaps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 gaps with no eggs. So 24 eggs can be put inside 2 trays of 12, right? The smaller tray can hold 12 eggs. Divided by 12, I get 2 trays. So in other words, I have 32 big trays of 30 eggs plus 2 trays of the smaller tray. I get 34. Okay, that's how you do this question. So your answer mark here, your method mark here to get 32 plus 2. And here, this step also important, method mark for this. Let's move on to the next question. Now, Mr. Chen spent 1/7 of his money on 3 similar ties. Mr. Chen spent 1/3 of his remaining money on a jacket. He spent $420 more on a jacket than on a tie. How much money did Mr. Chen have at first? I also get confused, so I would better be solving this line by line, which is what I'm going to show you now. He spent 1/7 of his money on 3 similar ties. Okay, so that he can divide his money into 7 parts, and he spent 1 part of it on 3 ties. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and he spent this on 3 ties. I'm going to cut these 3 ties into 3 parts first. I'm going to redraw them later here, okay? 1, 2, 3. And I'll explain what is this. These are the 3 ties that I rearranged here. Now, he spent 1/3 of his remaining money on a jacket. This part here is his remaining money. right? He has 7 parts. He spent 1 part on 3 ties. So remaining 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 part, if I divide by 3, I get my 1/3. 1/3, 1 out of 3. So this part is spent on the jacket. Okay, we know that he spent more money on the jacket than on the tie. So it's a more than kind of model. I need a stacking model to see this clearly. So I redraw my jacket here, 2 parts, 2 parts. And my 3 ties, I reorganize them this way, 3 ties. So you see, I can draw it this way, or I can move it down like this, okay? Now, why do I do this? Because the 420 is more than on a tie. He spent $420 more on a jacket than on a tie. If I drew it this way, like jacket, then I put the 3 ties here like this, I cannot put in my 400. 420 is not here. So I have to cut up this model into my 3 ties and move it around like this. Then I can understand this sentence. He spent $420 more on the jacket than on a tie. So that's why the 420 is this. Jackets cost more 420 than a tie. Then I can see that, okay, every box here, right, is equivalent to 3 smaller units. Then I can see, oh, actually this 420 is equivalent to 5 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I can write this equation out. 5 small units is equivalent to 420. 1 small unit is 84. So 1 big unit would be 3 small units, right? 1 big unit is 3 small units. So I times 3, I get 252. That is the value of 1 small unit. So how much money did he have at first? If 1 small unit is 252, then to find out what is 7 units, very simply, just multiply by 7. So the answer mark is this, method mark here. And very important, the first method mark would come from this part here. That you'll be able to see this relationship. This is a very important method mark. Without this, you can proceed on to solve this question. Let's go on to question 11. Now, Mindy had some square and round buttons. Now, the ratio of the number of square buttons to the number of round buttons was 7:12. So, square to round is 7:12. 7:12. Now, after Mindy bought another 30, so this is at first. After she bought another 30 plus 30 square buttons, the ratio of the number of square buttons to the number of round buttons became 3:4. Notice there was no increase or decrease for the circle buttons. The actual number of circle buttons, round buttons are the same, but the ratio changed. Right? Notice that here, the difference between them was greater at first. There were way more round buttons than square buttons. But after adding 30 square buttons, the difference between them narrowed down to just 1 unit. Now, how to see this in a better way, I show you here. So at first there were 7 units here and 12 units. Or you can see later on there were 3 units and 4 units. So if the important part is this part first, focus on this part. If there were no change in the round units, how do we see the 4 parts at the end and the 12 parts in the beginning to be equivalent? You see how I cut it? I cut every 4 part into 3. 4 times 3 is 12. So that's how I saw that this part is 1, 2, 3. Okay? Therefore, I can cut this part into my 7 part. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And how is this important? If I draw this down, I know that this 30 here is actually equivalent to 2 small units. How do I know that? Because the 2 small unit plus 1 small unit gives me 1 big unit. 2 small unit plus 1 small unit give me 1 big unit. If 2 small unit is the amount added to form the 3 big units, that means that 1 small unit is 30 divided by 2, that's 15. 1 big unit would be 3 small units, as you can see here. And that will be 3 times 15 is 45. I'm supposed to find out how many round buttons you have in the end. Round buttons will be 4 big units. So if 1 big unit is 45, 4 big units will be 4 times 45 is 180. Or another way you can do it is this. You find out what is 1 small unit is 15. And the round buttons, right? Round buttons, there will no change in it. If 1 small unit is 15, then 12 small buttons, sorry, 1 small unit is 15, 12 small units will be just simply 12 times 15 is 180. Much faster. So if you've done it this way, of course, this will be your answer mark, this will be your method mark, and the first step here will be your method mark. If you've done it this way, then this will be your first method mark, this will be your last method mark, and this will be your answer mark to get these 3 marks. But either case, this is the very first important step to get 30 divided by 2. If you cannot see that this 30 is actually these 2 small units, then you cannot solve this question. Let's go on to question 12. As usual, I will highlight the angle I'm supposed to find, and then I'll write down my steps and I'll work towards it. So let's think about the question first as to how do we get to the steps to get it. In the figure below, K and P, and PQ are 2 isosceles triangle. Okay, now they've driven in the 2 peak for us, very good. And towards which lines are equal, right? Kn equal to Kp, Mp equals to Mq. And towards one the angle is 28. Find angle MLN. MLN, this small angle here. I was thinking, to find this angle, I will work backwards to show you. If only I have these 2 angles. You see, if I have these 2 angles, I can use the property angle. Sum of angle in a triangle is 180. 180 minus these 2, I get this right. So I need to find these 2 angles. So how can I find these 2 angles? Then look at this. Okay, to find this angle, you see there's a triangle here, right? Isosceles triangle. If I can find this angle, then I use angle on a straight line to find this angle. And plus, if I can find this angle is the same as this angle. And this is another isosceles triangle. With this angle being the same as this angle, these 2, 180 degrees minus these 2 will give me this angle number 3. So having found out the way to do it, I can now just work out the steps. First, we find out angle P and K. The same as angle KPN. Alright, K and P, okay. So 180 minus 28, so this will be K and P, yeah? KPN, sorry, KPN. So I'm going to find these 2 angles. So 180 degrees minus 28, then divided by 2, I get 76. So this is 76. This is 76 also. Degrees. Next step, step 2. Find out this angle. I use angle in a straight line. 180 minus 76. I get this angle. 104. This is 104 degrees. Next step, step 3. I find out step 3, which is this, by using 180 minus 76 minus 76. I get 28. So this angle is 28. Finally, we are up to this point. Yeah? So 180 degrees minus away 24 minus away 28, you'll get angle 4, which is the one that we're supposed to find, MLN. That's the last step. Right, 3 marks. So A1 here, M1 here. At the previous M1, alright, I think any of the steps here I think the first step is usually very important, right? If you can't get this step, you can't get to the rest. So the first step here is your M1. So this is how you solve this question. Next page. Alright. Now we're going to stop here for a moment. So you take a break, and then we're going to watch the next part to solve the remaining 3 questions. Alright, I hope you had a good break. Now let's carry on to resolve the remaining 5 questions. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Okay, just 5 more questions. Now question 13 is a bit difficult, so if you don't get it the first time, it's okay, never mind. In a farm, there were 460 more ducks than chickens at first, so I have my at first. So don't need to draw the border first, just listen to it for the first time. Just watch. I have my chicken, I have my ducks, ducks and chicken. There were 460 more ducks than chickens at first. Now, we were told that after 30% of the ducks and 60% of chickens were sold. I'm going to redraw again to show you. Alright, let's say my ducks, chickens, what do you mean by 30% of the ducks? Now, I can think of it this way. 30% of this part of the duck plus 30% of this part of the duck is still 30% of the total. So let's cut it up into 10 equal parts first. I've cut this portion into 10 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, which each part representing 10%. 30% of the ducks were sold. So sold will be this part, were sold. Similarly, for this part, 30% were sold. Now 30% here is of 460, so 70% were left. 70% of 460, so this part is of this. And we told that 60% of chickens were sold. So chickens wise, sold were 60%. If this is 100% of the chicken, 10 equal parts, then 60% were sold. 60% were sold. I go all the way here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 60% were sold. And this is the amount that were left. And that's the amount of ducks that were left. 7 parts here. So this is 7 parts left, 3 parts sold. This part is 4 parts, 6 parts were sold, 4 parts were left. And after that, alright, let me redraw one more time so I can represent it by the 1202. After selling away this part, after selling away this, after selling away this, what were left? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me draw this part for you. So for my ducks, I have 7 parts left. Chicken, 4 parts left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this will be the 4 parts of chicken that is left. This will be the 7 parts of the duck that is left. Plus this part, another 70% of 460. And what is 70% of 460? Let's work it out. That will be 710 times 460. And I'll get 322. And the total number of chickens and ducks left is 1,202. Now, if only we have all equal parts, then we can divide, right? So let's get rid of this 322. So next step will be 1,202 minus 322. I'm left with 880. And 880 would be the part I'm highlighting here. This would be the 880. Because the 332, this part is the 332, was already subtracted away here. So what's left is the 880. Now here what do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 parts there is equivalent to 880. 11 parts is 880. So 1 part of 1 unit is 880 divided by 11, and I'll have 80. So every 1 part here is 80 animals. Okay, now this will be your first M1. It's not easy to get this first M1, right? Next thing, we are asked to find out then how many chickens were sold. Well, how many parts of chicken were sold? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 60%, right? 6 parts. So part A, 6 times 80 is 480 chickens were sold. So this part you have M1, this part is A1. That will be the first 3 marks. Now, second part of the question is this. From the sale, for each chicken was sold at $12, how much were collected from the sale of the chicken? The second part was easy. The hard part is the first part. Now part B is, now you know that 480 chickens were sold. And they were sold at $12 each. Just simply multiply these two numbers, you get your answer, 5,760. This is your A1, this is your M1. Now, I'll advise you to now watch this section again for question 13. And this time, you can write down the steps. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Okay, now in this figure, it shows the 2 wheels of radius of 14 cm and 21 cm. Clearly, the smaller one here is the 14 cm, and the larger wheel here is the one with the radius of 21 cm. Alright, 14 cm, 21 cm. And they're placed beside each other. Now, Tien pushed the 2 wheels away in opposite direction. The small wheel make 5 complete turns, and the large wheel make 14 complete turns when they touch the 2 walls. Now, complete turns mean, right, we have already done in class, right? 1 complete revolution is equivalent to 1 circumference. So 2 complete revolution or 2 complete turn will be equal to the length of 2 circumferences. So what's the circumference of small wheel? First one is straightforward, give you marks. That's to guide you along. So part A, very simple. Remember your CARD, right? Circumference is pi times diameter. And the area is pi RR. Radius of the small circle is 14 cm. And the diameter is 28 cm. Diameter of the small circle is 28 cm. So for the first step here, pi times diameter, pi, it will ask to take 22 divided by 7. So 22 by 7 times diameter is 28, and you will have 88 cm. So to get the first part here, your 1 mark comes from your answer, and your method mark comes from showing this step. Now, the tricky one is the second part of the question. Okay, what is the distance between the 2 walls? So how do we measure it? Well, if we start moving from this point, then you start to roll forward, okay, until you reach the end of the wall. How would you measure it? Okay, now let's carry on. Now for part B here, what's the distance between the 2 walls? Now, first understand this concept I'm going to show you. Let me give you one example. Let's say that this is the 2 walls, okay? I'm giving a separate example. And I have a wheel here. And this wheel, if you make 1 complete turn, it will go to the other side. Okay, let me give you the dotted line to show you. Okay, let's say it starts to spin forward. Now, how do we see the movement? So I'm going to mark this part. So I'm going to draw like marker ink on the wheel. Like in class, I use a rubber ring, right? And then drew it on the marker ring on it. So let's say this is a point on this circle. If the wheel turns forward, this dot will keep moving down, right? So let's say you move halfway and the dot move all the way to this point, okay? Now it's in the middle position. And keep on turning. This dot will move up again to this point. Now it has touched the end of the other side of the wall. So it has made one revolution. So in other words, from this point to this point is your one circumference. But this one circumference is not the distance between the two walls, because there's a gap here and there's a gap here. And this gap is exactly the same as 1 radius. This gap is exactly the same as 1 radius. So to find the distance between these two walls, in this example, you will need the circumference of one turn, one circle, plus 2 radius. So bear that in mind, this is the idea behind solving this question. So right now, you will see that this small wheel will make 5 complete turns before it reaches the other side. The large wheel will make 4 complete turns before it touches this side. Okay, my example is simple one. Just make 1 complete turn. This is just also simple. This is 4 turns. So what's the distance between the two walls? Let's look at the small wheel first, okay? So for part B, I'm looking for the circumference of the small wheel. I need the circumference of the small wheel, right? So pi times diameter, pi is 2/7. Diameter of the small wheel will be 28, right? 14 is the radius, diameter is 28, and I'll have 88, and that was found earlier on in the first part here. And since I need to make 5 complete turns of the small wheel, 88 times 5, and I will get, let me check out my sums, and that will be 440. Now, next side will be this. The big wheel need to turn 4 times to this side. Now, for the pi times diameter, this big wheel diameter will be 21 times 2 is 42. So, pi times 42, and I will get 132. And that's the big wheel. The big wheel make 1 turn. It makes 4 turns. Alright, 132 times 4. I'll have 528. Very important, okay? Now the mistake right now is just to add these two numbers, and that will be a mistake. Because then you're missing out on the 2 radius of each circle. Alright, missing out on these 2 radius of this each circle. So how do we add them in? So I need to have my 440, the small circle, plus 2 of the radius. 1 radius is 14, right? 2 of them will be plus 14, plus 14. Then you add in the big circle's circumference. It makes 4 turns. Then plus 2 of its radius. The big circle's radius is 21. So plus 21 plus 21. It's all these together, I get 1038 centimeters. And that's how you solve this. And this is your A1. This is your M1. Okay. Not easy to get this M1, okay, but this is how you do it. Let's go on to the next question now. This next question is a pattern question. Alright, part A is simple. Part A, look for the pattern. So what you see is to get from here to here, you plus 3, you get 6, plus 4, you get 10, plus 5, you get 15, plus 6, you get 21. And this to this, here, times 3, you get 9, times 6, you get 18, times 10, you get 30. So every time notice a difference here. 3 to 6 is 3. 3 to, then 6 to 10 is 4. 10 to 5 is 5. So 5 to, next one will be 20. So here you times 15. 3 times 15 will be 45. So that's how you get this half mark here and half mark. Now for the second part. What's the number of dots for figure 15? Now for part B, by examining the diagram, you see you work out the formula of this is actually 1 plus n plus 1 times n divided by 2. What is n? N stands for the number of dots. So you plug in the number, if for example here, number of dots for figure 15. So 1 plus 15 plus 1 times, sorry, it's n plus 1. So 15 plus 1 divided by 2. Let's work this out. You have your 17 times 16 divided by 2. That it will give you 8. So 17 times 8 will give you 136. That's your answer for part B. Now part C, what's the number of lines for figure 16? Now what you notice here is this. To get this number 9 for number of lines is actually 3 times 3, right? To get this, 3 times 6. To get this, 3 times 10. So what you notice is that the number of lines is equal to the 3 times number of dots in the previous figure. So for example, 3 times 3, 9, 6 times 3, 18, 10 times 3, 30, 15 times 3, 45. So for figure 16, alright, it will be 136 dots times 3 will be 408 lines. That's part C answer, M1, A1. This part here, this will be your M1 here, A1 here. Okay, going on to the last 2 questions. Now, Mrs. Chong baked some pies to sell. 1/4 of them were chicken pies, the rest were tuna pies. After selling 132 chicken pies and 5/6 of the tuna pies, she had 2/9 of the pies left. So what fraction of the chicken pies were sold? Alright, so I'll start off by looking at this. Okay, 5/6 of the tuna pies is equivalent to actually, what's the rest? If 1/4 of the pies that were baked were chicken pies, that means 3/4 of the pies that were baked were tuna pies, right? 1 whole minus 1/4 is 3/4 of the pies are tuna pies. So after selling, and we know that 5/6 of the pies that were 5/6 of the tuna pies were sold. So in very important language, 5/6 of the tuna pies. So 5/6, this is the tuna pies, right? Of the tuna pies were sold. That gives us, simplify, divide by 3. So 5/8 of the pies, as in of all the pies sold, were tuna pies. So by working this fraction out, 5/6 of the tuna pies multiplying by the fraction of the total of the pies, which is 3/4 are tuna pies, and we know that 5/8 of all the pies that were sold were tuna pies. Next step, 2/9 of the pies were left, which means that if 1 whole of the pies were there at first, take away 2/9 of the pie that were left, then 7/9 of the pies were sold. Now, 7/9 of the pies include the chicken pie and the tuna pie. So if 7/9 of the pies were sold with chicken pies and tuna pies, take away 5/8 of the pies that were sold, which were tuna pies, then we will get the answer as to the fraction of the chicken pie that was sold. Times 8 times 9, and we have 11. Okay, this will be the fraction of the chicken pies that were sold. This is for part A. Right, this is your A1, and this part will be your M1. Now, next step, how many pies did she bake all together? Now we know that 132 chicken pies were sold. This is a fraction of the pies sold that were chicken pies. So in other words, 11 parts here, 11 units is equivalent to 132 chicken pies that were sold. 1 unit will be 132 divided by 11, and you will have 12. So altogether there are 72 units. So 72 times 12, you get 864 pies altogether. That were big at first. Total number of pies big at first. Is 2 marks. This is 3 marks here. So this part you get your A1, this part you get your M1, and this division here is where you get your other M1. Now we go on to the last question. Joash prepared chicken nuggets for people attending his party. The ratio of the number of adults to the number of children attending was 5:4. So we have adults attending to children was 5:4. And we were also told that among the children, the ratio of the number of boys to the number of girls were 7:5. So under children, I just look at this part. Children are divided into boys and girls is 7:5. Now total here would be 12. Okay, now I see a good number here which is 12, and I see the one is 4. That tells me actually 4 can become 12 easily, right? Because this total is total number of boys and girls, which is actually the same as children. So the number of children in terms of ratio here will be 12 parts, which is 7 parts of boys plus 5 parts of girls will be 12 parts. So how does can 4 become 12 easily? Can. This idea of 4 becoming 12. So I just need to cut this by 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now I have my 3 times 4, I get 12. So I can become 12 very easily here. Okay, so I'm using my color, becomes 12. This times 3 gives me 12. So this times 3 gives me 15. And question A is so simple because it asks us for the ratio number of adults to boys to girls. That would be, adults would be 15 is to boys is 7, girls is 5. And that's the answer for A. Now let's go on to do B. How many boys attended the party? Now we look at the nuggets. 465 nuggets were prepared. So every adult received 3 chicken nuggets and every child received 4 chicken nuggets. Okay? Although adults are larger, they should eat more, but never mind, it's okay. So I will write it on this side because I'm short of space. So adults here we have 15 parts, right? So for adults, 15, if there are 15 adults, this is not 15 adults, this means that in one group of adults and children, there will be 15 adults and 12 children. So in one group of the people, so in one group of them, then 15 adults times adults would be 3 nuggets. That will be 45 nuggets. In one group of adults and children, there are 12 children. Then the 12 children, each of them takes 4 nuggets. That will be 48 nuggets. So in one group of adults and children, they will actually take 45 plus 48 equals to 91 nuggets. Now, there were 465 nuggets prepared for them. So how many groups of adults and children are there? How many groups of 15 adults and 12 children are there? I divide by 91, I get 5. So there are 5 groups of 15 adults and 12 children. So 5 groups of children, meaning there are 5 groups of 7 boys. Remember, your 12 children include 7 boys and 5 girls. So part B is how many boys attended the party? Well, there are 5 groups of children. Alright, and there are 7 boys in each group. So there are 35 boys. So that's how you get the answer to the second part. Exactly 1 hour. I hope you learned from this lesson. Do remember to always review the previous section if you need to, if you find the explanation to be too fast for you. All the best in your preparation and revision.